So you would start to twist your forearms to the right in an effort to get the club online. But as you do that, you then tilt back, right arm stays very bent and underneath the left, and the face stays quite open. That would be where the high right one comes from. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video I was discussing with a live lesson the reason why they kept leaving their face too open for impact, and for me a lot of that stemmed from an incorrect shaft position and a good player working out a decent reaction to get good contact and shallow the shaft, but unfortunately that did lead them to leaving the face open. So by not fixing the face directly but highlighting another issue, they started to hit the ball on a nice high draw. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's just go through what we covered in today's session. I wanted us to really understand where the two extremes come from. We had one that was too steep and strike was really jeopardized. The second one is where we hit this really high right shot. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we could get a much better release for you. The first bit to understand, and again, you'll see it worse with driver, but the first bit to understand is where you swing it quite short, you get the club relatively stood up. Okay, so it's short and stood up. Now, you haven't got a lot of time to shallow that club out. So what you would do is manipulate it in the downswing. So you would start to twist your forearms to the right in an effort to get the club online. But as you do that, you then tilt back, right arm stays very bent and underneath the left, and the face stays quite open. That would be where the high right one comes from. The alternative to that, which we saw a couple of times, is the shaft gets relatively vertical. In short, you don't have time to perform that move, and it comes down too steep. Sometimes you'd fat it, or because the club was traveling down too steep into the ground, you would then start to see that chicken wing out the other side. And the reason for the chicken wing is because you're about to plough the club into the ground. So you pull your left arm up in an effort to keep the club out the ground and maintain strike. Once we got the shaft into a better position, so for us it was a very simple feeling of the butt of the club, shoulders back, butt of the club then points at the ball. Quite a nice one for that was gripping down the club, dragging the shaft across you like that, and then that kicking in, rather than trying to get it on plane really quickly and fanning it open. So just making sure you turn, then get the club a little bit more laid off by pointing that at the back of the ball. And the movement for that is just twisting the forearm slightly to the right. And once you've got the club into a better position, and the club is now traveling down shallower earlier, you now have the opportunity to release the club better and actually have the face close. For us, the feeling of that was making sure that rather than keep the right arm bent and underneath, you could actually now straighten the right arm. It could now lengthen and extend. Just by extending the right arm, you can see how my wrist is in this position. If I then pull my arm back close to my rib cage and bend it again, it is likely that that will point a little bit more to the right. So actually allowing that extension to happen. Alongside that extension, the piece that really helped you close the face was understanding how the lead wrist worked. And you would see a lot of golfers as they come through, they'd have nice straight arms, and this left arm or left wrist would be underneath the right. You didn't have that, you had the polar opposite. Now, the feeling for us there was throwing a frisbee, and I thought this is a really good way to describe the release. If I was to throw a frisbee from my left hand, I would allow my forearm to rotate, my knuckles would bow down a little bit, and I would release the frisbee like that, okay? Now that's relatively helpful because number one, you're understanding that the forearms can roll, and they're not just going to chuck over because I'd launch the frisbee down. If I was going to glide that frisbee along the air, it would do that. The knuckles down part helped you maintain loft. So as you started to work down, release the arms and throw the frisbee, the head started to close and loft started to come down as well. And we really started to see them little draws towards the end. So to recap, understanding that shaft was too steep, you being a good golfer, figured out a way to shallow it out, but that left the face open. Right arm stays underneath for too long and you end up holding it off. Now the shaft is much more on plane. You're able to work it down. Now because it's more shallow, you have the opportunity to then lengthen and release the club, and the ball naturally travelled out right and drew back. So good job. So I hope that video made perfect sense into why my student was hitting the high right, or he could then get quite steep and really jeopardise strike. And like I said in the video, a lot of that being the shaft pitch being at the wrong angle for a player that swung it too short. You can definitely get away with the shaft being more picked up or across the line, but for a player that would swing it longer and had more time to shallow the club. So what I mean by that is, if I had a player that did that move, the club got into that position at that point in time, but they carried on going and the club got across the line, they have now got a little bit of time and space to then work the club into a better position. But I would say if you're somebody that swings the club a little bit shorter, it would be ideal to allow the club to lay off a little bit more so it's shallower earlier, so you can spend a lot of your time pivoting and releasing it in the right way. So I hope that video made a lot of sense, and hopefully you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. It would be extremely helpful. See you soon.